Hello and welcome everybody to this session on Tech Accelerator. We're going to talk about Microsoft Entra ID Governance. My name is Peter van Leeuwen and I'm together here with Manoj.
Hello everyone, I am Manoj Reddy, an identity is engineer in the security CXC team.
Good, let's dive in. So Entra ID Governance. So let's start off with our approach on identity governance. So what's our vision here? So the vision that we have is that we want to build a complete solution for all of your IAM and identity governance needs, as well as multi-cloud permissions management. So that means that we want to deliver controls for employees, business partners, consumers, workload entities, and all of their access. Of course, we need to enforce those controls to their applications and to their resources anywhere. And we do that via standards as well as partnerships with application ISVs. We want to manage and govern those identities at scale, and not just human identities, but also, like I mentioned a bit earlier, those workload identities and system identities. While we're doing all that, of course, it needs to be secure, not only for ongoing threats, but also for any emerging threats. And we want to remove any dependencies to on-premises identity management infrastructure. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not supporting governance in the on-premises infrastructure. We have connectors to reach back into the on-premises environment, but we want to enable you to have a fully cloud managed and governed system. So no dependencies on premises infrastructure. So Entra Identity Governance can bring value in many parts of the user journey. So this user can be a guest user as well as an employee. The first step that we need to do, of course, is onboarding the user in the directory. When we onboard users, we have different options. We can get the user in from an HR system. You can create them manually. You can invite guest users through the invitation mechanism of B2B. So many options to get that user into your directory. Then we need to make sure that the user has access to resources. And that first access to resources, we want to happen that automatically. So that's also called birthright assignment sometimes. And I deliberately say resources here because this is not just applications. We can also provide access to groups, team sites, SharePoints, and other resources. When that user has access to resources, they probably need some additional resources that they didn't get in that automated assignment. So we also have capabilities that the user can request additional resources through self-service. When the user has the resources, we also need to start thinking about recertification. What we don't want to have in the directory is to have users with unneeded or stale access. So we also provide recertification capabilities through the access reviews module. If the user happens to be an administrator, we also have just-in-time and just-enough access capabilities. So that's all to reduce the attack footprint, and because we don't want to have a lot of permanently assigned administrator accounts in the environment. And at one point, the user may decide to leave your company, or in the case of a contract might be ending. So we also need to take care of the offboarding of the user. So we will deprovision the accounts in any of the connected systems. In all of these steps, there is already a lot of automation available, but there is one automation layer that sits on top of this. And that's what we call lifecycle automation. Lifecycle automation focuses on the JML processes, so the joiner, mover, leaver processes. While we're doing all this, there is also one thing very important, and that's the ongoing auditing and reporting. Now, with the launch of Entra Identity Governance, we introduced a couple of new features. So let me go ahead and highlight a couple of the things that we recently introduced. We built an integration with Microsoft Entra Verified ID. So Verified ID, that is our solution for decentralized identities. This will give you the possibility to provide a much smoother, efficient, and secure onboarding process. You can use this for your employees, but this is also very interesting if you want to provide access to any guest users in your tenant. We also introduced machine learning into the solution. So in access reviews, which is the module to do recertification, we provide recommendations to the reviewer so that reviewers can make a better decision to decide if they need to approve access or deny access. So we added a machine learning feature in there, which is called user to group affiliation. And what that will do is that the machine learning will calculate the distance within the organization between users. And that will help you to decide if it's an outlier to the rest of the group or not, so that you can make a better decision to approve or deny the access. Of course, we still have the recommendations on the last signing date as well. And we're also looking at adding more recommendations in the future. We also introduced Lifecycle workflows. Lifecycle workflows is a feature that focuses on workflows for your joiner, mover, leaver processes. The feature comes with a couple of templates, and those templates already contain the most common tasks used in the JML processes. You can customize those tasks to whatever fits your organization, and you can extend the workflows as well with custom tasks. Those custom tasks are being built through an integration with Azure Logic Apps, which uses a low-code, no-code workflow designer. Azure Logic Apps already contains hundreds of connectors, so it's very likely that the connector that you need is already there. If the connector is not there, it's also super easy to build your own custom connector to maybe a home-built system that you might have. Those workflows can be triggered manually, of course, and they can be triggered based on a schedule, but they can also be triggered based on attribute state changes. So you could, for example, build a workflow in your joiner process where you will say, okay, 2 weeks before the person starts, I'm going to execute a number of tasks in preparation of the start of that person. Now, we also introduced something that I'm personally very excited about. We introduced a new identity governance dashboard. This page will allow you to track your complete identity governance journey. It provides you a lot of insights in your environment. You can click through on those insights, learn more, and learn how to improve the state of your environment. It also comes with a set of reports which provide even more details. So let's take a look at one of those reports. This is one of the reports that is around guests in your tenant. We got feedback from a lot of customers that guests are challenging, at least for a lot of the customers. So we built this report to provide you lots of insights on the guests in your tenant. You can actually monitor those guests at scale. There is a configurable threshold so that you can configure like, hey, I want to see all the guests that have been inactive in the last 90 days. You will get all the information for those specific guests. So that will actually help you provide a better management of the guest in your tenant. Now, I've just highlighted a couple of the new features that we introduced, but what's better than talking about them? That's showing them. So, Manoj, can you take the viewers to a demo of the solution?
Thanks, Peter. Definitely. Microsoft ID governance features offer significant enhancement to both administrative and end-user experiences. In this demo, I will try to highlight these enhancements. Let's look at how to configure an access package to request a verifiable credential issued by Entra Verified ID before submitting a request. In the Entra ID Admin Center, you can navigate to Entra ID Governance pane. Under Entitled Management, you will see Access Packages. Here, I'm selecting an access package that I previously created called Developer Access. In the policy, you will see the details about your current policy. Under the request blade, you can select the option to ask for a verified ID. During configuration, you will add the identifier of the verifiable credential issuer. In this example, the issuer is verified employee. This means that before submitting a request for this access package, entitlement management requires the end user to submit a verifiable credential issued by this issuer. Employee verifiable credential helps the user to prove that he works for Woodgrow. Similarly, you can issue different types of verifiable credentials for different purposes. You can issue a verifiable credential after an employee finishes a training course, and you can make that as a prerequisite before giving access to certain resources. Consider this example. You are trying to access Power BI dashboards. You can ask for a Power BI certified verifiable credential before giving access to that to the end user, or a security training verifiable credential before requesting access for sensitive apps or data. Let's look at this in action. Here, I'm signed in as a user who's trying to access the developer access package from the My Access portal. You can see the resources which are part of this access package. Once the user submits the request, we will see a QR code that the user can scan using his verifiable credential wallet. In our example, I'm using Authenticator app, which also acts as a wallet. On the screen, you can see the verifiable credential issued by Woodgrow tenant for the verified employee. I can scan the QR code from the My Access plate and the wallet will pick the correct verifiable credential if I have more than one in my wallet. User will have the option to share the verifiable credential, and once the verifiable credential is submitted and validated, user will be able to continue the request process. You can ask any additional info you want from the end user and collect those details as part of the request. User will finally submit a justification and submit the request. Once the user submits the request, an approver will receive a notification and they can see the request from their My Access portal. Here, we see that an approver have a pending request. If he selects the request, they can look at the details of the access package and the verifiable credential. The verifiable credential will show the details about the user, when it was issued, and so on. The access package details will show you which apps and groups and SharePoint sites this access package will give the access for the end user. In the second part of the demo, we will look at access reviews and how machine learning based recommendations can help the reviewers make the decisions quickly and reliably based on data. Access reviews can be configured to review access of teams, groups, and apps. They can be set so that they run frequently and have multi-stage reviews and can even auto-apply results based on recommendations when no action is taken. You can also create access reviews for Azure AD and Azure RBAC roles with the help of privileged identity management. Let's create a new access review for a group. Here, I am navigating to Access Reviews under Entra Identity Governance Access Reviews. We create a new access review. We select Teams and Groups. Under the group picker, we will select the group for which we are trying to do the review. We will scope it to all users. If you select this checkbox, only users who are inactive in the group for the last 30 days will be included. You can do this if you want to reduce the number of users who you are reviewing. In the next section, you can decide the stages in the review and who the reviewers are going to be. In this case, I'm going to add myself as the selected reviewer. You can choose the frequency and the duration of the review in this section. You can set the review to run weekly, quarterly, etc. You can also choose if the review runs forever or ends on a specific date or ends after a specific number of iterations. In the next section, we will have some automation options. If a reviewer fails to respond, you can choose to either remove access or approve access based on your security stance, and you can also auto-apply these results to the resource. In this section, we will enable the decision helpers, which can help in generating the recommendations for the reviewer. The first option helps you identify users who haven't signed in the last 30 days. The second option, user group affiliation, calculates the affiliation based on who you report to and org hierarchy. We finally provide a name for the review and create an access review. Let's see how a reviewer can perform a review quickly with the help of machine learning-based recommendations. Within the My Access portal, a reviewer will see a pending review. In the overview, he can see the details about the review, and once the review is selected, they will see the users who are part of the review and individual recommendations. For each selected user, reviewer can see the details and the recommendations backed by data. We see an example of a deny recommendation here because the user has not signed in the last 30 days. And we also see the affiliation being called out here. Reviewers can then accept all the recommendations together or take a decision per user as well. When the reviewer accepts the recommendation for all the users, the actions can either be taken manually or auto-applied based on the automation settings. In the final part of the demo, let's look at how Lifecycle workflows can help with join, move, leave scenarios using built-in tasks and how you can leverage Logic Apps and hundreds of built-in connectors which are part of Logic App to perform repeated tasks. You can also design custom connectors for specific line of business apps to perform repeated tasks specific to those apps. Consider a manager onboarding a new employee. The employee will be synced to Entra ID from the HR system first, and then the employee spends the first few days trying to get his credentials and requesting access to different resources that he needs. Lifecycle workflows can help perform this job within seconds. I have an existing workflow which helps with the onboarding process. Under tasks, you can see the different actions that can be scheduled to run. In this example, we have 6 tasks, starting with enabling the employee, sending them a welcome email, adding them to some groups and teams, etc. You can also trigger a custom set of actions with the power of logic apps using custom task extensions. And in the final step, the manager will receive the tap in an email. The manager can then share the temporary access pass to the employee, who can use that to set up his or her device for MFA and Windows Hello for Business. Once the user finishes the Windows Hello for Business, they can log into their machine and they will have all the access they need waiting for them. These workflows can be triggered in 2 different ways. Manager can trigger this workflow on demand by selecting the Run on Demand option. Here I'm selecting the user and one of my new onboarded employees, and we trigger the workflow. While we wait for the task to complete, let's take a look at how to trigger these flows automatically. Under the execution conditions, you can set the scope and the conditions under which the task will be triggered. Here, I'm choosing employee hire date as the trigger, and I'm triggering the workflow as soon as the event happens. Under scoping, I have chosen the Department of Sales as my scope, and I can choose the different properties available on the user to set up multiple clauses for the scope. Under history, we can see our previous execution and we can see the status of each and every task. If there are any errors, they will be reported here. That's all I had for the demo. Thanks for listening, guys. Back to you, Peter.
Thank you, Manoj, for the demo. So let me wrap this up really quickly. Just to summarize, what is Microsoft Entra ID Governance? So we provide capabilities for that automatic provisioning and deprovisioning for the identity lifecycle. That also includes automation for the lifecycle processes, so the join and move and leave processes. We have entitlement management capabilities to provide access to your users, not just your employees, but also guest users. It's an open ecosystem. We have integration possibilities through REST APIs, client libraries, so you can actually do all this programmatically as well. And you can build any custom integrations through logic apps, through low-code and no-code designers. For recertification, we have our access review module, which is policy-based access certification. We now added more of those recommendations in there, that machine learning, to help the reviewers to make a better decision to approve or deny access. And for your administrators, we have that just in time, just enough access in privileged identity management, not just for the roles in Microsoft Entra, but also for your Azure resources. Now, what if you want to learn more or what to do next? Our solution page is available at aka.ms/identity governance. All of the product documentation is also available online. You just go to aka.ms/identity governance overview. And if you want to stay updated on any new developments in the Microsoft Entra product family, so not just Entra Identity Governance, but also the rest of the products, go to the Microsoft Entra blog, which you can find at aka.ms/identity blog. You can test all these features out by adding a trial into your tenant. So go to aka.ms/security free trial to get a trial. If there are any questions that we didn't answer yet, right after this session, there is an Ask Me Anything session on Entra Identity Governance. We have a lot of super subject matter experts on the solution. So if you have any question, join that session right after this session. With that, I would like to thank you for joining this session. As we say here in the Netherlands, it was gezellig. And we hope to see you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye. Welcome everybody to the Ask Me Anything. So my name is Peter van Leeuwen. I'm product manager here in the Identity Customer Experience team. I hope you enjoyed the previous session on the Entra Identity Governance. Super handsome guy presenting that. So I'm not here alone. I'm here with a rock star of identity governance folks. I think if we would form a band, we would go right up to the chart to number one. Let's do a quick round of introductions, starting with Mark.
Hi, I'm Mark Wall. I'm product architect for Entra Identity Governance.
Sumi.
Hi, I'm Sumi, and I'm part of the Microsoft Security Customer and Partner Success team.
And last but not least, Jeff.
Hi, I'm Jeff Kasmer. I'm a product manager in our CAT team who works with customers on deploying our solutions.
Super, thanks. So if you have any questions, if you go to aka.ms/accelerate/entra-id-governance, very long one, that's where you can post your questions. We have a first question already from Sandeep. Does Entra support integration of custom on-prem applications? Mark, can you give an answer to that one?
Yes, the answer is yes, it does. So we have a number of different on-premises apps that already we have integration with, so you can govern, who has access to those apps. We have connectors to send your SCIM traffic, that's the new internet standard for provisioning, down to on-premises. So if you're building on-premises apps and you want to use the standards like, OpenID Connect and SCIM, we can send the SCIM traffic to your app to say, hey, new users got an access, user remove access. We also have connectors that transition the access managed from Entra Identity Governance down to SQL, down to LDAP. So if you have some other database like Oracle database, or you have an open LDAP directory and you want to govern who has access to apps that are using those, we can map that down as well. Web services, SOAP, REST are there. Number of prepackaged applications that you can buy, we have connectors for that. And then you also have the access for AD that's currently in previews. That's one area we're going to keep adding more for AD-based apps in the near future.
Thank you, Mark. So we have another question on MIM, so Microsoft Identity Manager, which is our on-premises product. And the question is, I would like to see some kind of comparison to MIM so we know what the continued use cases for that solution are. Seems like most of the use cases are now handled by Entra. Sumi, can you give an answer to that one?
Yeah, I think this is a question that we get often from customers. MIM as a technology performs a lot of critical functions for a number of our customers for quite a few years, a lot longer than our Entra Identity Governance, of course. But first up, want to assure customers who rely on MIM today that we have extended support to 2029. So no need to go pull out those systems, and please do stay on your modernization journey and take the right step. Map those use cases to what's available within Entra Identity Governance, and at your own pace, sort of move some of those workflows to the cloud. We certainly believe, like the rest of Entra solutions and Microsoft security solutions, that cloud provides not just greater security, but also modern ways in which you can make sure that your security keeps up with those threats and provides you the best protection. So we urge our customers, as well as our audience today, not to think of it as a one-stop shop or a silver bullet that now that there is an Entra Identity Governance that they need to go and rip out those on-premises MIM infrastructure, but instead think of it as a journey to really start modernizing and adopting the latest and most secure technologies in the cloud that comes as part of Entra ID Governance.
Thank you, Sumi. So just as a reminder for everybody, if you have any questions, aka.ms/accelerate/entra-id-governance, that's where you can post your questions. We have a question on SAP. The question is, we have an on-premises SAP environment. We want to provision accounts to SAP, but SAP does not support SCIM. How do we do this?
Yeah, so this is a question we get a lot. So we have basically two approaches that we've been working with SAP on for how we integrate your ERP systems with Azure AD, and the Entra ID Governance. For R3 systems that have various BAPIs, which are the interfaces that SAP provides for integration, you can use that on-premises provisioning I mentioned earlier with our web services connector to map between Azure AD users and calls into the BAPIs, which are made via the SOAP protocol when you want to assign a new user to a role in SAP or remove a user from SAP. So that's possible today. We have an article on SAP integrations up on learn.microsoft.com. We'll be adding more to that. So if you have other scenarios, please let us know. You'll read that article, add comments. For S4HANA systems, that's one area where we integrate with SAP's middleware, the SAP Cloud Identity Provisioning, and the other capabilities provide a bridge between what we have within Azure AD and your S4HANA systems, whether on-premises, private cloud, or public cloud. So if your SAP system on-premises is S4HANA, I'd recommend looking at the SAP Cloud Identity Provisioning middleware because that already has an interface for Azure AD. Again, we can set the access up within Azure AD through Microsoft Entra ID Governance. The SAP Cloud middleware will then read that and provision the users into their business roles within your S4HANA environment.
Thank you, Mark. So we have a question from Jamie. Jamie is an MSP and he is working on Entra Defender solution, and he is asking, has Microsoft already integrated OpenAI to automate the deployment of best security practice? And if not, do you think it's possible to create this? Jeff, what are your thoughts on that one?
Sure. So AI is a very popular term across many products at Microsoft. We recently announced the Copilot capability in security. So you're going to start seeing these capabilities across that whole spectrum. But in the case of identity, especially identity governance, we're really focused on bringing machine learning. We gave an example of that with access reviews. How do we make it easier and more effective for people to review access using that machine learning to guide them on recommendations? So I would expect to see more of this type of capabilities coming all across Microsoft platforms.
Thank you. Question from Diego. Do we have any training path for Microsoft Entra, or what should be the first certification/training I should cover as a cyber IAM consultant to be ready for my clients? Good question.
So I could take that one. So one thing that I'm really excited about is our Microsoft Learn patterns. If you haven't gone to the learn.microsoft.com, there's a plethora of different certifications. So in the identity space, we have SC300, SC900. I would definitely look at some of those as a beginning steps to get from the early beginner to the more advanced.
Yeah, I definitely want to add to that. So if you're familiar with the Azure trainings, like the one Jeff mentioned, SC300, SC300 provides great foundational understanding in the Azure AD capabilities, including some that Peter mentioned earlier, the access reviews, entitlement management. A lot of that content is already covered in the SC300 exam. So if you go and take a look at that training material, that'll give you a good foundation for understanding what we're going to be doing next with the identity governance.
Thank you. So for everybody, just as a reminder, you can go to learn.microsoft.com to find those training paths there. And again, any questions, aka.ms/accelerate/entra-ID-governance. Question from, and I'm now going to mispronounce his name probably, Yusuf. Can identity governance be extended to on-premises Active Directory to have insights into admins' accounts? I think this is a good question for Jeff.
Sure. So no problem. So when we're bringing those accounts from on-premises, we can bring them into the Azure AD environment and manage that lifecycle. So now we can do things like manage groups in Entra that we can write back on-prem. So now we can manage when somebody joins the organization, gets an admin account, and when they leave the organization, maybe I want to take advantage and remove those admin accounts, but also manage the apps, whether they're on-prem, the groups that are consumed on-prem, all from Entra centrally.
And also, we have Defender for Identity for your on-premises identity, and we also have some other tooling that can help in the on-premises world. Question from Maksud. I don't find the identity governance dashboard in our tenant. Where do I find it? Well, you won't find it just yet. it will become available on July 1st when the Entra Identity Governance queue is going live. So hang tight for another 3 days, and then it will be available in your tenant. Question on Azure AD PIM role management. Azure AD PIM role management programmatically is still a challenge considering different resource types involved in Microsoft Graph. What can we do to improve the usability of the solution?
So I can comment on that unless somebody else wants to. So we've actually gone through several iterations of improving the PIM APIs in the MS Graph. So for those who are not familiar, the Microsoft Graph is the one API for the entire Microsoft ecosystem. So we've brought more capabilities, not just the PIM role management, but bringing things like entitlement management all from the same API. If you haven't looked in a while, I would definitely look at the latest documentation because there's been some really good improvements there.
Cool. Thank you.
Maybe we also want to talk about some of the ways in which our customers can provide us feedback. Jeff or Mark or Peter, if you know the right channels for folks to go to understand where they can let us know their feedback, I think that would be awesome as well.
Anybody want to comment on that one?
Jeff was going to say Microsoft Q&A. So yes, we have a Q&A forum for individuals to give us feedback and basically vote on ideas for enhancements. Again, because the Entra ID Governance is a relatively new brand, you'll see a lot of these capabilities under the existing Azure AD family, but you'll be able to take a look and see what kinds of asks there have been for roadmap capabilities for all of these capabilities. Entitlement management, what are the top asks, PIM, access reviews, as well as the other features of Azure AD like conditional access. So please, if you haven't gone to Q&A, take a look there and you can give us feedback. You'll probably find a lot of the things that you'd like to see are already listed there. Someone may have already asked for them. It takes us some time to get through everything, but please upload the ideas that are most relevant to your organization, because we do use that as a key input when we're planning what we're going to do next.
Yeah, and also don't also hesitate to reach out to your account teams. Like if you have anybody within Microsoft that has that is a contact for you, don't hesitate to reach out to them. They can also then get in touch with us, and we can get feedback through that channel as well. For Microsoft Q&A, the link to get there is learn.microsoft.com/answers.
And I just want to echo, your feedback is really important. There are so many features that exist today that came from customer feedback. So I get to work with all the engineering teams on triaging, bringing that into the product. So please keep it coming.
Oh, and now this is super great. Now I lost my screen, so I cannot see any questions. There it is. For some reason, my screen went black for a moment. The wonders of Windows, so to say. Question from Dean: are there any plans to add the Entra services to the Azure Services catalog so that when we do a search in Azure, the Entra services get found?
That's a good question. I don't think we had a current plan for that, but we'll take a look at that. One thing we are take a look at already is how do we restructure the information architecture for the Azure AD Entra Identity Governance relationship. Oftentimes we see a lot of capabilities that kind of span multiple of these experiences. For example, one of the features that Peter was talking about earlier, Lifecycle Workflows, integrates with Azure Logic Apps. And so oftentimes someone might start from using an identity governance capability to create a onboarding workflow, and as part of that want to then say, well, now I want to go out from here to Logic Apps and use a Logic Apps no-code designer to then add additional steps to the process. Same for entitlement management, and we have other integrations where we leverage Azure Monitor, Azure Data Storage, and other features in order to complete the governance model. So we are looking at, how do we make it cleaner so that someone can navigate seamlessly between all of the different places where they need to go. We also see a lot of interest in making these capabilities available for more personas, for more roles within the organization. So historically, the directory has been the realm of the core system administrators, people that ran AD or Exchange. We're seeing an increase of interest in using these governance capabilities by people outside of core IT as well. Someone who might be the owner of just one group or one application, or in charge of just one department within the organization. And so this is one area we're also looking at. How do we make these capabilities consumable for someone who doesn't know the big picture IT landscape? They don't really know Azure, they don't know the Azure portal, but they just want to complete a task. I want to go and give my team access to my resources. I want to set up a policy for my business partners to get access. So we see there's opportunities to continue to build out not just more integrations with the Azure experiences, but other portals, other experiences. We have what's called the My family within identity, My apps, My groups, My account, and My access. That's one path. We also see opportunities to integrate with other Office experiences, M365, Teams, basically wherever the user is located and doing most of their operations, so that they can easily get to the identity governance capabilities they need.
Thank you, Mark. So another question on the topic of lifecycle workflows. How do you integrate identity governance with the HR department operations? Jeff, what are your thoughts on that one?
Sure. So one of the key things you want to start that life cycle is getting HR data. And that's why I love integrating HR systems directly into Azure AD for provisioning. We get that data. So now we know when somebody joins, we could do those automation of those common admin tasks. Somebody's creating a mailbox, maybe requesting to get added to groups, or even sending their initial credentials. These are manual tasks we can automate based on that trigger from HR data. So bringing that flow for when HR says they're joining, or when they're leaving, do those cleanup tasks. You don't have those lingering access or lingering identities that admins may have manual tasks to clean up. So I think it's a great cohesion there happening today. And I also want to add, I know Mark talked about the Office apps, but really we mean any application you have integrated into Azure AD. Third-party SaaS apps, line of business apps, they're all being managed in the same way, all from Entra.
Thank you, Jeff. So we have another MIM, so Microsoft Identity Manager question, and now we've made Sumi our resident MIM expert. So the question is: Entra ID Governance the successor to MIM, and will there be out-of-the-box integration with student records management, such as Banner?
So Anwar, the right way to sort of think of it is not as a successor, but rather, as the two things right now working hand in hand. MIM is fully supported and can be utilized by any customer who has an Azure AD P1 or a Microsoft 365 E3 license. And so for those customers who over time have invested in MIM and established that as part of their critical workloads, especially for those on-premises use cases, the right way to think of it is as a foundational sort of building block as they really play out that cloud-led IGA model that they want to deploy over time. We know a number of our customers are modernizing, and so we'd love for customers to really pause and think about what is the right path for them to think about how to modernize their environment, to get more secure, and to use the best of all of the solutions that's available within Entra to really do that. So it's not a successor, but rather right now, it's all part of the bouquet of solutions we make available to customers to realize their identity governance vision. As for the second question around Banner, we don't yet have like a committed plan specifically for Banner, but we do want to make it possible for customers to integrate with all of their existing systems of record. So it'll be interesting if you could explore our documentation to see what's possible. Depends upon each of those systems, the protocols they're based on, etc., and what we support. So it'll be great if you can take a look, explore our documentation, and see what's possible.
Thank you, Sumi. And for everyone, if you are looking for the technical documentation on identity governance, just go to aka.ms/identity governance overview, which will take you to the first page of the product docs for IGA. We have a question on conditional access. So just as we made Sumi our resident MIM expert, we're now going to make Jeff our resident conditional access expert. So the question is, does Entra help with conflicts in conditional access policies and baseline policies? I'm having issues trying to implement solutions in which conflicts don't interfere with securing our company devices.
So great question. So since we've been focusing on identity governance for assigning access to all the applications and services in Azure AD, conditional access is a great feature of the Entra platform to have additional controls we apply when accessing those resources. So we understand that conditional access can be complex, and sometimes customers make it too complex. But we have great capabilities like templates now. You actually can go and look at the template gallery, and you want to require MFA for all admins, apply the template. But we also can help you deploy those, we call report-only mode. You can enable report-only mode and then report on where those conflicts are, so you can add exclusions or add or tweak those policies to your specific environment. So I'd recommend deploying the conditional access templates in report-only mode. Run that for a period of time, 2 weeks, a month. We'll look at your gaps, your exclusions, and then turn them to enforce and on. And that makes it much easier to have those insights to deploy what's happening in your environment.
Thanks, Jeff. So we have another question here. We are moving away from NetIQ IDM, an event-based architecture based on the user groups and their attribute states change in real time. We love to see the same capabilities in lifecycle workflows. Will it be coming? Well, we actually already have some attribute state changes with triggering the workflows. We're also exploring more state changes in the future, but you can already do this today with some of the workflows that we have in lifecycle workflows today. Another question here from Eric. Is there any supported pattern available or coming that allows a transfer of source of authority from AD to Entra to Azure AD on a per user basis for clients intending to decommission their AD environment? Mark, what are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, this is one we are starting to see more. Like, organizations are moving from a model of, well, everyone's created an AD so that they can get Exchange and they get the file share and they can add domain join their laptop and things, now to, well, only some people in our organization still needs access to AD-based applications. Do the rest still need to have that AD account? So yes, you're going to see more capabilities in the Azure AD Connect family of technologies in order to basically change the direction of flow for how identities, users, groups, devices, and so on are managed across Azure AD and AD. So as you see today, most of the flows are starting from I create my users in AD and my groups, and I send them up to Azure AD. And that's been the case for the last 10 years. We've already started changing that direction with our provisioning flows for the HR inbound. We can go and we can create the users from the cloud HR systems into AD or into Azure AD. It's your choice. With the group write back public preview, we have the ability to set groups into AD, give access to AD-based applications for cloud-based users. We also have features already in Azure AD Connect to transfer the authority for your entire domain if you are turning off your AD entirely, if you're moving off of AD. For the per user basis, that's one that's a little bit more complicated. It requires a little bit more intricate dance, particularly for hybrid Exchange Online customers. So that is one area where we are working on providing more guidance for how an organization that has been using on-premises Exchange to hybrid Exchange and Exchange Online, and now wishes to transition fully to Exchange Online, can over time then change the authority for those Exchange attributes. And then once that process is complete, we'll be providing more documentation on how to then change the authority for the AD system. So watch that space. We're still working on providing more guidance there. We do want to make sure that in that transition process, there's nothing that can inadvertently, break the AD and Exchange dependencies that many organizations are dependent upon today.
And I just wanted to add there, don't wait for features. start looking and planning that journey now. I have customers who are on the journey. I have ones who have completed that moving from on-prem to the cloud. And we have a great document called Road to the Cloud that talks about the pattern that we see our successful customers. I definitely recommend starting there.
Thank you, Mark and Jeff. So the next question is actually a range of questions. So when can we expect an on-premise connector for Active Directory provisioning for non-HR based provisioning scenarios? But also for PIM role assignment, both Azure and Azure AD. Can we expect Terraform support? So it's a long range of questions. Who would like to take that one?
Well, I can take the parts that I want to take, and then other people can clean up after me. It's like, well, Mark, you actually didn't cover the most exciting part. So as mentioned before, being able to basically change the direction of flow is something that we have been working on for a number of years now. The group write back is our first preview along that path. There's more capabilities that we're going to continue adding. Dates, I can't give you any dates at this time because a lot of these capabilities are not yet in preview. In terms of the non-HR based provisioning support, this is one area that, again, is possible today. A number of our MIM customers are doing that. They're using Graph in order to read users from from Azure AD, give them access to AD. You don't need MIM for that scenario. We've documented both a MIM and a non-MIM approach for that. That's primarily for situations where you have a handful of users, guests, perhaps your vendors, and they do need access to on-premises AD web-based applications through the application proxy. So by recreating those users in AD, and we document how to do that, you can then give those users access to AD-based applications. The application proxy performs what's called KCD, Kerberos Constrained Delegation, so that the user doesn't need to have a separate credential for AD. They don't even need, if they're a guest, to have a credential in your Azure AD at all. They authenticate to their home tenant, their home identity provider, and then through Kerberos Constrained Delegation can get access to on-premises web-based apps that you authorize that user for through the application proxy, application role assignments, and conditional access. PIM role assignments, again, that's possible today for Azure AD and the Microsoft Online Services systems for Azure. Azure Arc is another technology you'd recommend taking a look at as well. Azure Arc extends the reach of Azure to on-premises systems. And we also have had a number of previews about using Azure AD for sign-in to both Windows and Linux-based systems. So take a look at Azure Arc because we think that the Azure Arc capability is very powerful in helping to make sure that you can have consistent policies and use PIM for the Azure role assignments and then extend the reach even to VMs, to servers not hosted on the Azure platform itself.
Thanks, Mark.
And I saw the comment there about Terraform support. I believe Terraform, because Azure AD and the Entra platform is built on APIs, extensibility. I believe Terraform already has their own module for managing Azure AD. So I tell you to search on that. And also on the HR per non-HR provisioning, right? We mentioned the road to the cloud, right? I'm used to provisioning on-prem. As I'm making that transition, how am I provisioning to the cloud and from the cloud? I definitely check out that documentation.
Thanks. I was just about to mention the Terraform support because I have actually some customers that are using that today. So just a bit of feedback that we just got. They say MIM was built on a different technology, not secure as what is possible in modern clouds. Just a big leap in the right direction that the identity team is doing now. Excellent work. So thank you for that feedback. We are just about at the end of this Ask Me Anything. So just a round of closing thoughts for anyone. And I will just now go the other way around. So I will start with Jeff.
Sure. So I'm very excited. I mean, with the announcement of Entra ID Governance, right, we're bringing these great capabilities to help customers go from on-prem to the cloud, but manage everything from the cloud. I think it's a great and exciting time.
Sumi?
I think we're hearing a lot about customers modernizing, really moving to the cloud. Would highly recommend that folks consider going through our documentation. Please provide us feedback. You've I believe you have an understanding of each of our Twitter handles. Like, feel free to ping and reach out with those questions, with those concerns. Now know us by name and by face, so you have no excuse in terms of not being able to reach out to us and ask some of these tough questions. We are surprisingly very open to your feedback, and we actually are counting on it. So thank you so much for taking the time today. Really excited about what's coming and what we can all achieve together.
Cool. Mark, last.
Yeah, so last second. So yeah, again, just want to say thanks for all these great questions. Please continue to give us feedback through Q&A, through feedback, through Twitter and other social media. This is really helpful for us. So please let us know, where do you want more documentation, more guidance, more features, more capabilities? We want to make sure that we have the tools and the technologies and the guidance to help you be successful in your orgs.
Well, for me, I just want to thank everybody for joining the session. On July 11th, there is the Entra announcement moment. So if you want to learn about all the new great stuff that's coming soon, go to aka.ms/Microsoft MSFT Entra to register there. There will be a lot of other cool stuff that we're going to announce. And I would like to also to thank our Rockstar SMEs today for answering all of your questions. And we hope to see you soon next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.